Welcome to the Twice Over Movies podcast. If you're new here, check out our website at thetwiceover.com to get a better understanding of how we do our movie reviews. Our goal is to provide insight on elements of a movie which you consider more or less important, so that our scores are never misleading. Remember to follow us at the Twice Over on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and support us on Patreon.
Now that you're back after you've paused and watched the movie, let's get into it.
Yeah, so okay, first thing, let's talk about that reveal. I think that's probably the first thing we can talk about. What did you think about that reveal? Or let's just say, how do you feel about how they did the reveal?
The reveal is, in terms of how it's carried out, it's perfect, I think. I mean, it was
Really? Okay.
great. I don't know, this one hurts, man. Like, it was, as someone who loves a good twist, man, like that was super upsetting. I mean, so I guess there's kind of two twists here, but like one is the bigger twist, obviously. So kind of the first thing you find out is that Jean and Simone are the product of rape, right? So the whole time they think that this child that their mother had in the prison at Kafar Riyat is their brother. That's the son that she had in prison. That's why, everyone who's telling her she was pregnant in prison, she was raped and she got pregnant, all that, they're thinking, okay, wow, like we have a son, we have a brother, and he was the product of that. Then they find out through this nurse that, actually she had twins in prison, which means it had to be them, Jean and Simone, right? And that is kind of the first shocker. But the big shocker, obviously, is later down the line when they find out that the man that raped their mother in prison was actually their brother. And the way that they kind of play that out is, did someone actually tell Simone on screen? I can't remember that part right off the top of my head. I mean, so he goes and talks to the guy, the Shamsuddin, right? He's the what do you want to call him? The
warlord.
The warlord. There you go.
From the Civil War.
Right. So that's where Simone goes, and that's where he finds out. But I can't remember if they show that on screen. But that the actual end of that conversation. But what you see right after that is obviously Simone is a little bit shell shocked. But when he's talking to Jean and she's like kind of prodding him, like, what happened? Like, why are you acting weird? All he can kind of spit out is like, this is obviously I'm reading off the screen, so it's not as elegant as maybe it would be in the original French, but he basically says, how can 1 + 1 = 1? And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, how can 1 + 1 = 1? And then there's like kind of like this awkward silence, and then she just like shrieks like she realized what happened. At first I didn't like love it. I mean, it felt a little bit clumsy, but I think again we're losing something in the actual dialogue there. And then second, like there's kind of this whole thing where Jean's like a mathematician, right? So like she's throughout this movie, she's challenging like every possibility kind of in the manner of like a mathematical proof, right? Like her professor or whatever is the one who sends her on this quest. He's like, you're never going to be happy unless you can, find out what happened. Like you're not going to be able to just focus and, do your work and get engulfed in, pure mathematics, whatever he says, right? He's like, you have to go find out. And the way that you find out is you don't start with the unknown variable, you start with the known variable. And so he like sends her to somebody that he knows. And like, she basically solves every little part of her mother's life to try and like, get to the meat of it. And so that's kind of like the final scene of that. So, I mean, there's a little bit of, being poetic there, I guess. Did you feel like it was really poorly executed or something?
Well, not poorly executed. I thought it was good enough, but I had to read up on it after to see like, okay, after reading up on it, I thought it was perfect. I don't think I totally am okay with Denis Villeneuve's like method of going about this.
Why exactly? What did you have to read up afterwards that changed your mind or whatever?
This is on Wikipedia, all right? Yeah. So like that very first scene after they come back from the lawyer finding out about the will of her mom who just recently passed away. She's a math teacher, right? And she starts like a math class, and she's about to start talking about the Collatz Conjecture or Collatz Conjecture. I'm not a mathematician, so I don't know what that is, but it's a conjecture where that no matter what the value of n, the variable, is, the sequence will always reach 1. That's how that movie starts, right? I mean, like that's how the story kind of gets going.
Okay.
I'm like, wow, that's why he's saying that how 1 + 1, how does it equal one?
Okay. That's a
And
nice
like
little
that's what
dig. I like that.
yeah, and then she would get it because she's a mathematician, I guess. I don't know. Like that's why like it connected so easily. Because if it was me like hearing that, like, or it's like I don't know, I'm just thinking about it. Like if someone was saying like how does 1 + 1 equal one, I'd be like just super confused. Like what are you talking about? Because the idea of it being the same person would like never cross
Yeah,
my
that's
mind.
not obvious on its face when you hear 1 + 1 = 1, right? Like that doesn't.
Yeah, that's my only like original dig at it was like, okay, come on, like that's so like abstract. But then when I saw this, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure.
I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with you, but I mean, again, I'm not sure. I wish I knew the original language, and maybe it's like a little bit more elegant in that way. But I
Yeah,
did think kind of that repetitive kind of theme of like the mathematics of it. Like I did like that throughout the movie, so I thought it was appropriate to kind of tie the ribbon on it with
mm-hmm.
bringing it back to that. It was maybe it could have been a little bit more smooth, but in the end, I thought that was kind of a nice theme that they kept bringing it back, right? And I mean, the whole story is really about what do you want to call him, Nihad or Abu Tariq, right? He has two names, but that's their brother slash father, and his entire life is kind of the sum of these independent forces combining in just the
Yeah,
right order and like creating this horror, right? And you can kind of see that throughout the movie because there's obviously I mean there's a lot of independent like big events that happen, and that's what ends up creating this whole story, right? It's not like really like one continuous thing. There's like it starts with Noel has this lover that she's trying to elope with, and there's the cultural aspect of it, and there's the religious tension. So I mean her family ends up killing her child's father, and sends her away, and then so she puts the kid up for adoption, but then there's this war, the civil war going on, and so the orphanage gets blown up, and they think she's dead, but then there's this warlord that actually takes all these orphans in and makes them into soldiers, ending up, I mean, I can go through the whole plot like that, right? Ending up at the prison and all of that. But the point is, like, none of those things are really connected, and they all just combine in the right order. So I did like kind of that thematic aspect of it, I guess.
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's where we're getting at with like the narrative score being so high
Right.
because it flows very well considering how much did happen.
Yeah. And the other thing about this scene, I mean, I guess if I step back and forget about the exactly how they laid it out or whatever, I mean, I probably should have seen that ending like quite a bit sooner than I did. I mean, I don't think really understood it until they pretty much said it, right? And the thing is, I probably should have seen it, but it's I don't know. It's just such a horrible, disgusting ending that you almost don't want to believe it. And like I even if it was in my mind, I was kind of ignoring it for as long as I possibly could until they pretty much hit you over the head with it. So like that moment stood up anyway, even if like it wasn't perfect because of like kind of the shock value that's in there. And it wasn't just shock value on its own, right? I mean, it all tied together. It had basis in the earlier parts of the movie. So like I mean, it was kind of just a really good cohesion of everything that had happened up to that point.
Okay, yeah, so I actually wanted to ask you that. I thought so. The first time I saw this movie, it's been like about 8 years approximately, right? And I actually do not remember how shocked I was at the reveal. I just don't remember if I like saw it coming or not, or if it just blew me away. I just know it was like a great reveal. But this time watching it, I felt that it was a little obvious pretty early on. Let me see. I think I wrote it down like when I felt like I wrote down we find out about with about a half hour left in the movie. So it's a 2 hour movie. And I'm not sure how much later after that the kids actually find out about their father, but I thought at the point where she was in prison giving birth and the nurse says, "All right, the first one is out. Get ready for the next." Like, all right, she's having twins. So we at that point we know for a fact this rapist is the father of these two kids. But at that point I was like, all right, there is it's like how you were trying to say how everything sums up into like finding out this one person who their brother would be now. I'm like, there's no way that there's not enough information available to like for it to be another person. Like clearly, like that's like your first major hint. Like Abu Tariq is Nihad, that the brother and father are the same person. I felt it was a little obvious at that point. I don't know if you like saw that coming this time, watching it at this time around, but I don't know.
No,
Again, I don't remember. I don't
yeah.
remember how I felt the first time, so I can't even like compare it. But I just this time I felt like okay, that seemed pretty obvious to me.
No, that is true. Like you're kind of like counting up all the different aspects of the movie and all the different characters and who there's been emphasis on, and you're like, well, there's really no one else. There's just this one, mystery guy, Abu Tariq, and you kind of, I guess there is that aspect of it. I think I definitely did feel that, but again, like I was just ignoring that as a possibility because you don't want to have that be the ending, and so you're kind of
Yeah.
mentally resisting it. I mean, at even whatever at a subconscious level perhaps, but I just I guess I was still shocked in the moment of it, for that reason. I want to ask you one thing, which was about the name Abu Tariq. Did you think about that at all? I was kind of thinking through. I mean, it's what's called like a kunya, right? It's like a nickname that's like typical in Arab societies, and it basically just means father of Tariq. But I mean, typically you take that name when you have a child. You take their name as kind of your nickname, right? So Abu Tariq is this guy's nickname. That just brought in the question in my mind that does he have another son named Tariq, and what does that mean for Jean and Simone here? I mean, they have a nephew slash brother, I guess.
I mean, interesting that you mentioned that. So, yeah, you're right about the like the etymology of like the name Abu Tariq and what that would like mean that he would be a father of a kid named Tariq. But I actually did look because I know like the name Tariq is a common name in like for Muslims particularly, especially in from people from like the Middle East.
Yeah.
So I looked up the name meaning of Tariq and it means someone like to strike, and it's an adjective form meaning striker. So that kind of explains why he was called Tariq, and I think it was more for that reason. So he's the father of like a striker, as in he's the one who does like the torture and um, interrogations, right? So I assume that's what it was trying to. That's why they picked that name for his nickname, I guess.
Okay, interesting. I mean, that could be a fair enough explanation, right? I mean, so what's the difference there? I mean, why is it Abu Tariq instead of just Tariq then? You're saying like he's the one delivering the strikes, in other words?
I think it's because I think when you attach like Abu to it, it like gives it a little, it makes it a little more grand. So like
Yeah.
he's like the grand striker, like he's not just like your ordinary striker, pretty much.
Right, he's like the master
He's
of it, or he's the top of his game basically, which is but I mean, so that's the other thing, right? Like that is kind of his as horrid as it is, that's like his weapon of choice, right? He's known for a special kind of torture, as they tell us in this movie, right? And
mm-hmm.
that is kind of the weapon that he enacts on his victims. So this probably is not the first time he's done it, and it's probably not the last time that he did it either. So I mean, it just brought the question into my head that these are two illegitimate children that he has, as a result of his days of torturing, but it's probably not the only ones out there. Maybe it's the only ones that he knows about because he's kind of fled the whole area. He basically left for Canada or whatever, wherever he ends up, and he's living kind of the simple life over there. But I mean, there's obviously huge ramifications of all of everything that he did that he kind of left behind. It just, I mean, and that with the fact that he has that particular name, it brought the question into my head as to like how much more sprawling is this? Maybe they aren't the only ones, and that's kind of horrifying of a thought.
Well, I mean, now that you're mentioning it, I would think, yeah, for sure, there's other illegitimate children that he's had throughout the years of being Abu Tariq, right? I mean, it just makes sense. Like you said, it's a very particular type of torture that he was known for. Um,
And I guess the
So,
one
yeah.
qualifier we can put on that is that, I mean, typically these children were killed. It happened to be this particular nurse who, kind of struck a deal and said, like, no, I'm going to take these kids and I'm going to take care of them and they're going to be ready when the woman who
Yeah,
sings gets out of jail. So maybe they were
basically,
the
yeah.
exception.
Yeah, basically because she was the woman that sang, and like they liked that about her.
Yeah, and her children, her struggle was special, and that's why they did that. So maybe the others didn't make it. So maybe they're not alive. Maybe they were there, but they never made it out of that situation. Whereas Jean and Simone, or Janan and Sarwan, which is their original names,
Hmm.
maybe that's why they made it and the others didn't. So maybe they are the
I
only
see.
ones around. But
That kind of confused me when I first watched this. I remember like, wait, Sarwan, what the hell? Like, who the hell is Sarwan? And I realized, oh, it's just like probably the Arab name, like the original name he was given, and then they
yeah,
probably
and then
changed
at
it
some
when
point, she
when
changed.
they
Yeah,
went to
she
Canada.
chose more Canadian French appropriate names for them, I guess. The other thing is that I thought they did a really good job of intermingling that whole story with kind of the regional conflict, because it's kind of hard to follow even. But she's originally from a Christian family. The boy she's trying to run away with is Muslim, so that's why there's kind of this whole conflict at the start of the movie, right? And I mean that's why the Nihad's father, Nawal's lover, gets killed at the early on by Nawal's family, right? And that's the first thing that kind of kicks everything into motion. But basically, what ends up happening is that so the Nihad, this child out of wedlock, is that the right term? I don't even know.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so he ends up going to this orphanage. Then the orphanage gets blown up, and she presumes, I think, at some point that maybe her son is dead because the orphanage was blown up. Unbeknownst to her, all the orphans were actually taken by the militants, and they're all being trained to be soldiers at this point. But so as a Christian, she ends up joining the Muslim militants because she's got so much like pent up rage at the fact that not only was her lover killed over this religious or regional conflict, but also her son was killed as a result of that. And it was, I believe, I can't remember if it was the Christians or the Muslims who blew up that
So yeah,
orphanage.
this is a little confusing. So it is. So her lover Wahab was a Muslim refugee. So her brothers kill him
Yes.
to defend their Christian honor. And then it is the Muslim militants that bombed that, not just the orphanage, but the surrounding neighborhood, just a Christian neighborhood, in retaliation for all the stuff that's happened before. And then so that's when the Muslim militants take in those kids, those orphans, as like child soldiers.
Right.
But then Nihad is one of those kids that ends up back in the hands of the Christian nationalists, so the Christian militants, and he becomes, because the prison that she's in is a Christian militant prison, because she kills their political leader, right? Or at least shoots them. I don't know if they ever make it clear if she actually killed him, but she definitely shoots the Christian militant leader, and she goes to prison for that. And Abu Tariq, aka Nihad, is a guard there, so he ended up there. So he was with Shamsuddin's army, and then he somehow, like, he was still a young guy who kind of got lost and got caught up with the Christian militants after that.
Yeah.
So he was with basically both sides.
Right.
Well, I guess the gist of it.
And so, I mean, she as a Christian ends up fighting for the Muslims, kills a Christian political leader or whatever. I'm pretty sure she killed him, right? She shoots him point blank. So ends up in the prison, and she's being held in a Christian prison in the end. So like, I mean, the number of times those two characters, Nihad and Nawal, like swap sides in this regional war, it's kind of it makes your head spin. And I didn't even I tried to explain it just now, and I couldn't even keep track of which side each of them was on. So I thought they did a really good job of kind of showing that basically the whole idea that there are no real sides in war when you're talking about a personal level. Like, everyone's humanity kind of gets lost in the conflict, and the war itself doesn't discriminate, right? So that I think they did a really good job of showing that. And so that was another factor that was kind of playing in, where I couldn't keep track of who was on which side of the war. So like, I'm trying to place her son Nihad, like, okay, which side of the war would he be on? And I couldn't keep track of it. So then the whole thing about him being the prison guard just it was a couple steps away from me. So I just never got there until they said it.
That makes sense. All right, I mean, let me ask you. So, which timeline did you enjoy more? Was it like Nawal's story going through the events with her, or was it like following her kids, like trying to piece things together?
That's a really good question. I think I liked the kids' point of view better.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure why, but I just seem to enjoy those scenes more throughout the movie, and definitely as it got towards the end of the story, then I enjoyed those more and more. I mean, I kind of I guess kind of an underplayed character here is the notary. I guess is he's he was Nawal's boss, and he's the executor of the will, I guess. So, he's kind of involved from the start. He's kind of prodding these kids to go and do what the will, implored them to do, which is find their brother and their father that they never knew existed, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of pulling the strings the whole time, and I just kind of liked the way that they kind of like they yeah, again, it's kind of mathematical, but they were kind of slowly working out each step of the plan and how we can find out the next thing that's going to lead us to the next thing, which is eventually going to lead us to the father and the brother. So I mean, I kind of enjoyed the way that they worked through it and kind of like used small clues to get from one point to the next. I don't know. I mean, I guess Noel scenes were more based on the war and the conflict a lot, and I mean that stuff is just generally harder for me to watch, I guess.
So, I'm gonna say you probably like the I guess contemporary part of the timeline because you're a lawyer.
Yeah, I mean,
You just like seeing like legal stuff being executed.
maybe I actually hate legal movies and TV shows. Like, it's the worst thing in the world usually because they're hella inaccurate. But yeah, I guess I mean I did like kind of like the reasoning through of all of it. I guess you can say that on a more broad level. So I'll agree to that.
All right, so for me, it was actually the opposite. I'm like 100% sure I definitely enjoyed Nawal's story or going through her life story much more. At this, I just felt it was like a little more engaging, and just more fascinating to like just see someone who's, I mean, it's just one like tragedy after another for her, and obviously it hurts to watch and it's like heavy, but like I was just like I don't know. I was compelled by it, I guess you could say. And also the actress who plays Nawal, Lubna Azabel, she just does an incredible job. I thought she was like easily the best actor on the in the entire movie. And like she's so believable. She's so like I mean her emotion is just so real that like I said, I just felt like compelled like watching it. Like man, it was just great. So for me it was definitely watching her story like unfold and seeing like what she had gone through and like how she ended up where she ended up where that she had to write these letters, even like her obviously this goes to I guess towards the writing, the way the will is worded, the way the letters that she wrote to her both to Nihad slash Abu Tariq in both perspectives as the rapist and the father and also as her own son, and like it's just it fit her so well that I don't know it was probably my like I was just waiting for it to go back to her story when it was looking at like with the kids and we're seeing like okay let's having them figure out what's happening. I'm like let me just go back to that story. I want to see what she's doing.
I mean, she was definitely, yeah, the star actor here. I mean, she did again an amazing job. I think something I mentioned earlier was there's a kind of a couple scenes that they keep coming back to throughout the movie. And the main one actually, more than the other one, is the pool scene, right? So early
Yeah.
on, you see, Jean swimming in this pool, and her mom's kind of just hanging out, and I guess basically she goes to see what her mom's up to, and her mom's just kind of like staring off into nowhere and isn't reacting to anything, right? And she's got this like blank, blank, blank stare on her face, right? Even that was good acting. She was like literally doing nothing, and it was really good acting from her. And so basically, as the movie goes on, they keep coming back to the scene. They show different parts of them getting to the pool, and who they're
Yeah.
bumping into as they're getting to, you know, the tanning beds or whatever, and all of that. Like, I mean, it seems a little odd that they keep coming back to that moment, and then eventually it all comes together, because that's where Nawal actually recognizes her. She recognizes Nihad and Abu Tariq at once, right? She recognizes Abu Tariq by his face, and she recognizes Nihad by the, I guess you can call it a tattoo that is burned onto his foot as like a birthmark, and that was put there by someone in her family, I guess her grandmother.
Her grandma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the time of her birth, right before they gave up the child, they put those 3 little dots so that Noel would one day be able to find him again. That was the whole purpose of it. And so she freaks out because she's in the pool, and so she's kind of at foot level for everyone that's like walking around on outside the pool, and she sees that, and she like loses it. She gets out of the pool, and as she's trying to go and see his face, she's so excited because she's like, of all the places in the world, right? It's him. I know it's him. I know it's him. And then she sees the face and realizes that it's Abu Tariq, and all of it hits her at once. So I really liked that scene, particularly by her, and there was, you know, no dialogue from her basically in that entire scene. But I thought that scene, the way they kept coming back to it, really helped tie the whole complex story together as well.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. I was trying to see if like there was something with swimming pools and like symbolism there in like swimming or in itself, but I didn't try too hard there because it just kept going back to it. But like you said, it also just played the role of just tying like the entire story back together.
Yeah, I mean, you can always force a theme if you want, right? Something about drowning and this, I don't know, whatever, but like you could probably do it. But yeah, it just, again, this movie was not really strong on that front, and it wasn't something that was clear there. But so moving on from that, I mean, connecting to that, the last sequence that you mentioned where he actually, Abu Tariq / Nihad gets the 2 letters that Jean and Simone deliver to him, and he's reading them, and you have Nawal's voiceover as he's reading them, that, you know, narrating the letters to you. That was, I think, my favorite scene, hands down.
Okay.
I was waiting for that scene the whole time, and I thought that was like just excellently executed. Like you said, the letters were so well written, and I mean, there's like rage for against Abu Tariq, and in a way she says something about how she's not going to hold it against him, right? And she says that to the son. In the son's letter, she says like, you know, like, you are as pure as you were that day that, you know, I gave birth to you. And like she holds no grudge against the son, right? She separates them into 2 people in her mind. I mean, yeah, the wording of the letters was beautiful, I thought. And, you know, I think that scene, Abu Tariq actually does a really good job of acting too, because like you could see like the derangement on his face basically as he's realizing what's happened. Because I mean, so we get like 3 reveals basically, right? Because you get to see Nawal realize what just happened, and like everything that happened throughout her life come together. Then you get to see the kids realize it, and then you get to see Abu Tariq realize the horrors that he's committed without knowing it. You know what I mean? So I think that was kind of the most striking one.
As far as like a favorite scene goes, I can see why you would say that. It is a memorable scene, and like you said, it's like a good payoff. Like you're waiting to like see that happen, like, because you want that confrontation to happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there for him because he doesn't know what he's done to his own mother. He also doesn't know he has 2 children, and halfway through the letter, he like it literally says like, you know, our children will deliver this letter to you. And as soon as he almost puts the letter down and like starts running back onto the street because he's like, they just left and those are my children. He can't find them, and he goes back and keeps reading the letter. But like, you know, he's getting all these realizations one after the other. So I mean, I don't know, I just love that scene. And I don't know if you noticed this, but so like in terms of cinematography, one of the scenes that I really liked was in that scene, while she's reading the letter to the son, the camera kind of pans away from Abu Tariq, and it pans like onto his shadow on the wall, and it's like this shriveled up shadow, like, you know, it's like,
I know what you're talking about.
it's like you know, I mean, you basically just get like a very narrow shriveled shadow on the wall of him, and it's kind of like rocking back and forth. I mean, it just reminded me of like a child in a womb almost, and I mean, it kind of, again, it that's like the innocence that's like buried somewhere in there. So I don't know, I thought that was like a really you know, poignant moment of the movie in terms of the filming aspect of it. So
That is a good catch for sure. I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't say like I picked it up myself, but like now that I'm like picturing it back, I mean, I just finished watching it yesterday, right? So like it's fresh in my
Yeah.
mind. Like, man, that's a good catch.
I yeah.
I mean, I was gonna go back to the favorite scene aspect. I mean, I can't say this is a favorite scene of mine, but it's hands down the most memorable. And honestly, when I was rewatching it, I was like dreading it, like, oh my god, like when this comes up again, I'm gonna have to look away. This is just too hard. It's too much. It's the scene where she's on that bus where she at this point she's pretending to be Muslim because she sees a bus of Muslim refugees trying to escape, and she just wants to get on that bus too so she can stop walking. But the bus gets stopped by Christian militants, and the Christian militants like just shoot the bus up, killing most of the people on the bus, but she's still alive, as well as another mother and her daughter. And she basically pulls out her cross that
While they're dousing the bus in gasoline and getting ready to light it up, right?
yeah, they're getting ready to light the bus up, and she pulls out her cross like, hey, look, I'm Christian, and then they're like, all right, like get out of the bus. And then she pretends that daughter, the mom and daughter in the bus, she pretends that the little girl is her daughter,
Yeah.
and tries to save her, right? But obviously the daughter is freaking out and like screaming for her mom, who's still on the bus, who they kill. And man, obviously eventually the Christian militants can tell like this is not her actual daughter. So the daughter starts running back towards the bus, and they just shoot her too. And then the bus is just on fire. And again, Nawal's acting is just amazing in this like sequence, because then she's just there. It's almost like the pool scene. She's just there like almost like lifeless, just staring like into like dead space, like doesn't know what to do. I was like dreading it when it was like coming up again. I was like, oh my god, this is gonna hurt to watch. Like it's just even like out of all the stuff from the movie 8 years later, like that was the scene that's like burned into my mind. And if that captures like the horrors of war, like that scene does it. Like it's just insane.
Yeah, I had that scene in my notes as well, and I mean, just yeah, the way that it's like a gut reaction, right, where they're letting her out of the bus, and she just says, "No, my daughter," and like looks the actual mother in the eye and is just like, "Give me your child," like, I can get her away. I can't do anything for you, but I can get your child away. And the mother like hesitates. She has that, kind of look in her eye, like she can't believe what she's about to do. And then she gives her daughter to Nawal. And obviously the kid who doesn't know any better is still crying for her mom and screaming and looking back towards the bus. So, that only lasts for about a minute before the kid tries to run back towards the bus, and then they just shoot her. And there's I mean, I don't want to say it's a beautiful shot, but it is a very beautifully shot moment where, as she's running back towards the bus, they give you kind of the long view from like further out, and you can see the child kind of like streaking across the screen, running back towards the bus, and then obviously from a distance just gets gunned down. I mean, I thought that was another really well shot scene as well. But yeah, you're right. Like that is kind of an encapsulation of the horrors of war right there on its own. Which, I mean, obviously the whole movie is about that. So that was one of my other favorite scenes as well.
Beyond that, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
One thing that I noticed on my second watch that I never really caught. So I don't know if you ever noticed this since you've watched this a few times, but the opening scene of the movie, it starts out, it kind of pans over the countryside, I guess, or not really the countryside, but it's up in the mountains, and there's there's some sort of like building or a structure, and they take you into a shot inside the structure, and it's a bunch of children just kind of huddled together, and there's like some militants around them kind of holding them there, and they're shaving the heads of all the children. So that opening scene is actually of Abu Tariq, or of Nihad, yeah. Right? They're being held by the militants, they're shaving their heads, and they give you a close-up shot of the tattoo mark on his foot. So yep. I mean, if you're paying very close attention, you actually already know everything that happened right there, because he was taken by the militants. That he's on the wrong side of the war. So, like, you can probably piece together the ending of the movie about halfway through. But I never caught that. I was so confused the first time around. I never really noticed any of that. But that was the last scene that I thought really stuck out to me, because Nihad, he's like, this is probably the youngest we actually see him. He's just a young child, and they're shaving his head as he's just staring directly at the camera, and he's got like whatever that look of like, whatever, like like he's losing his innocence, and like he's blaming somebody, like, and he's staring right at the camera, like his eyes are dead at you as the viewer, right? So it's like it's almost
And
like
that
he's
song is playing that you're talking
yeah,
about,
and that
the Radiohead song.
the Radiohead song, yeah, that's playing in the background, and I mean it's kind of like whatever. I felt like he's blaming the world, you know what I mean? Like he knows everything that's going wrong in his life, and you know doesn't know where to
He's
put it,
blaming
and it's
us,
because
the viewer, man.
yeah, it's the viewer, right? I mean, it's the entire world, because you can't put that blame on anyone. The war is kind of a product of all of humanity, and
Yeah.
so I thought that was a really cool scene, and I mean that's something that I was able to catch on the rewatch that I thought was kind of new, and I hadn't noticed it the first time around.
I do remember noticing the tattoo the first time around and like connecting the dots the first time. Even this time, one thing I noticed even more was like, man, they actually picked a very good child actor to play Nihad or Abu Tariq, because he's got like that strong, like defined chin, just like the adult actor does.
Yeah.
Like it could very well be the same guy. No, but yeah, and then like when you piece the story together, I assume that's after the kids are taken from the orphanage and Shamsuddin is turning them into like his child soldiers. So I assume like that's at that moment, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's when the orphanage had been attacked, and he's taking or it's shortly after that he's taken the orphans out. Yeah, that's where this would fit in. And I think, I mean, yeah, like I think probably halfway through the movie, if you had picked up on that, you would have seen the rest of the puzzle pieces at that point. But I was gonna say, also, like on that note, I mean, there's definitely a theme of like self-infliction throughout the movie. That's one thing that I think they came back to a few times. Obviously, Noel and Nihad and Abu Tariq, like, I mean, it's, you know, there's horrors being committed upon themselves, basically. So that's pretty clear. But it's also the bigger thing of the regional conflict, like we were talking about with the war. And I mean, it's, you know, it's you think you're fighting on a side of the war, but that's, you know, in the end you're hurting yourself and everyone else. So I think they came back to that a few times as well, in a good way. Did you have any other like favorite quotes from the movie? I thought there was a few pretty quotable things. Again, reading subtitles off the screen, but there was a few lines that I really liked.
Things that stuck out to me. I didn't write any like down, so I couldn't like tell you verbatim. But in the very beginning, when they're at the notary,
Yeah.
the dude.
Yep.
Yeah, when he's reading the will, and she is talking about how she wants to be buried face down and no stone, and I mean, like, again, it's worded like very well, and it's kind of setting it up for, okay, this is like some shameful stuff that I need to talk about, and things that you need to find out, which are gonna be like hard to digest, and it kind of sets it up pretty well. Just that the reading of that will.
Yes, so I'm glad you brought that up. That was the one that really stuck out to me. I don't have the whole quote, but she basically says, yeah, she wants to be buried face down, away from the world. You know, obviously the world has brought her nothing but you know, sorrow and horror, so she doesn't, you know, she's facing away from the world. And she also says that she doesn't want any sort of gravestone, because there should be no epitaph for those who don't keep their promises. I really like that line. There's obviously there's a whole thing about her fulfilling her promise through her children.
Yep.
And the promise is
not just to her children, to her grandma too, right?
To her grandma as well,
when she gives birth.
Yeah, because she said that she would find the child one day, right?
Yep.
And so she's not only doing that, but she's also confronting her tormentor, and it's all in one action. All of that is happening. So you know, those are the promises that she's going to keep, I guess. And you know, they play up on that a couple times too, like with the notary. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how seriously notaries take themselves in terms of their word. I mean, I hope everyone takes their words seriously, but like he keeps saying like that, like you know, these things are important to a notary, like a notary's word is sacred and this and that. And
yeah,
so,
because using the word sacred.
Yeah,
but like you gotta understand that he was her employer and like a family friend, so like someone close to the family. It's not just like a third party random notary that she
right
had.
Exactly. It's more about the relationship that he had with her. I thought it was kind of awkward that he kept saying like, well, it's because I'm a notary. And I was like, okay, dude. I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you take finances that seriously? Do you take accounting that seriously? Because I don't know if I mean, I take the law seriously, but like I don't talk like that. So it was yeah, a little bit dramatic.
All right, man. I think we're at a good spot. I don't want to, I guess, drag this out any further.
Are you sure? I mean, I don't have anything to do in quarantine, so like I might as well just keep talking. I mean, well, this isn't gonna air till
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but my bedtime, man. I go to sleep by 10:30.
That's
just
true.
about that time.
That's true. This is a night owl recording for you. So, no, but yeah, I mean, I will say you were 100% right about this movie, and I'm glad I finally got around to it, and I hope everyone else that you've told does too eventually. So, well worth it.
Eventually. All right, Yousuf, thank you. And everyone, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode.
Bye-bye.
Okay. That from Trump.
Thanks for listening to this production of The Twice Over. If you haven't already, subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcast. And remember to support us on Patreon or by sharing the podcast with a friend. Feel free to contact us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at The Twice Over, or email us at comments@thetwiceover.com. All of the music you heard is from Amerigo Gazaway. Check him out on Bandcamp and Spotify.